Good day to you. I'm feeling a little bit better. I think I'm looking a little bit better, but I still look like I've been slightly kind of slapped around a little bit. Hopefully, hey, what's up, Chuck?
Oh,
on cue, on cue. If you guys have not seen Chris's dog, it's an absolute gorgeous dog. Beautiful, beautiful. And that's where, if you've never joined us for a live show or seen the videos, where you hear the doorbell. That's Chuck's got his own little doorbell. Whenever I guess that I feel like we're gonna record, Chuck likes to say hello. So hopefully you guys are doing good. And Pride Izzy just going through some of the rare mounts that you have. What's your current mount count, Pride? What's up, Agent? Joining us over on the YouTubes. Welcome in, everybody. We've got a banger of a show for you guys today. As just a reminder, if you guys did not see yesterday's live stream, this week, this will be the last live show for this week. We got videos scheduled to roll out Monday, and then I'm going to be on a parental hiatus over on Twitter and on Ginger Prime's YouTube. I have a poll whether you guys think we're going to be having a boy or a girl. We don't know. Julie and I have been surprised each and every time. So roughly speaking, in theory, this time next week, boy or girl. So I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on the chat, whether we're going to have a boy or girl here or now, but you can always go vote in those polls and let us know as well. So I'm excited. I'm very excited about all that. And thank you guys so much for the likes here on the YouTube side. That is a wonderful way of telling YouTube that these podcasts are fun to hang out on. So welcome back. Chuck doing okay? Is he
that's great.
We need to get a Chuck cam and just have like a third camera. And we can be just like,
following him around, just doxing me slowly.
If
personal item at 18 inches or lower in my house.
There we go. Let's see here. Agent says, if you guys don't have Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, I highly recommend it. It even works on Steam Deck. Thank you so much for that recommendation. I never actually got into the Battle Network series as a massive Mega Man fan that I am. So maybe I'm gonna have to give that some opportunity to check it out. I'm gonna be probably having some downtime with my Steam Deck as I'm helping Julie with the new baby. So we're gonna have some fun with that. All right, so Chris, first and foremost, I think it's really important because I kind of was lurking a little bit in audio. I don't have that many meetings today, so I was able to kind of listen in. But you were going through a lot of the Destiny 2 leaker drama, NDA breaks. And so I caught only a part of that. And I thought it'd be a kind of a really good way to kind of start this show off in terms of the conversation, because over on Twitter, there's a lot of conversation going on about it. And for me, I honestly don't know where to fall. That's kind of the point that I've tried to make multiple times. But the internet is the internet. And I'm like, I don't know what to believe. And in the age of AI generation, in the age of not even just Photoshop, but like how we can literally generate AI video that can make anything look like anything. I'm just kind of saying, I just need to see evidence. And all so far, and maybe, in the last 10 minutes, new details have emerged. All so far as I've seen Bungie saying, we've seen irrefutable evidence, and that is it. And there's no and here's the facts of what's happened. But to catch everybody up to speed, for those who don't know, Destiny 2 Summit goes on, bike creators, NDAs are obviously a part of this, and apparently details, information has all leaked out onto the internet, and the witch hunting season has begun, which is unfortunate that last expansion was called the Witch Queen, but that seems to continue on. So Chris, what's your hot take on the season of witch hunting? Yeah.
I really just wanted to understand the difference between drama in 14 and what is newsworthy in other games, because we were talking about 14, and 14 ends up with just a preposterous amount of needless drama sometimes, where we're arguing over chairs, or two players that don't get along in a specific 8-man, or whether or not somebody is doing something that's allowed within terms of service but we don't like. And occasionally there is something, right? There's cheating during a race. There's these big moments. We've had some big reveals. We had a creator that had done some just awful stuff that ended up with a big letter about that. So occasionally there are moments that are absolutely disgusting and are something that people should know about and they're newsworthy. But the vast majority of it is like you're trying to fill a news cycle with everything that happened at your local high school. And it's like most of the time you're just filling the news. You're like, Brian usually walks his dog twice a day and hasn't walked him in 2 days. And like, that's it. That's what we have to get outraged about. Like, there's just nothing really worth it. And so as I go look at games like Destiny, where you have what, from an outsider's perspective, as somebody who just casually enjoys the game but isn't really tied into the community, like there can be some real animosity between the community and the content creators and the devs. There's like 3 teams in this like Frontlines campaign, and every once in a while, one of the teams is just getting beat up on by the other 2. So my understanding of this situation is that they, at this point, have had leaks, and like leaks are incredibly frustrating, right? Because
exactly.
If you don't tell anybody, you don't get a chance to hype things up. But if you want to hype things, you have to do things like media tour campaigns, interviews, and stuff like that. But then in trade, you're like, hey, I'm going to get these interviews over like a 10-day period to different outlets across, wherever. And they could be YouTubers or Twitch streamers or magazines. But in trade, all I ask in trade, there's going to be no exchange of money here. All I ask in trade is that you all publish on the same day. That way, the people who I got to talk to on Monday don't have an unfair advantage over the people who I couldn't schedule until Friday. You're all going to publish next Tuesday. And you all, that way, are on equal footing. It sucks for the guy on Friday that they have to edit faster, but it is what it is. We're just making the best of a situation. And that benefits us because we're releasing this product or season the following Wednesday or whatever. And so it'll be a hype cycle for us. And the date puts you all on an equal playing field. And so that's kind of been the way NDAs have been handled. You can go get beta access to games. You can get, access to interviews, presentation events. It's not an exchange of money, but it is an exchange of content, powerful content. So the creator, if they do it right, can go off and make ad revenue or whatever, further cement their position within the community, and they can monetize it in that way. And the company can use the hype to sell more product, so they get paid in that way. That's all great. But leaks break all of that trust. Leaks just immediately are like, hey, I said, hey, it'd be cool if you came in and took pictures of this new dining room table I built, and you use it as a chance to rifle through my tax documents in my office and then reveal those to the world. Or you just reveal something from an interview before the embargo date. So it could be something where they got access to something that really wasn't meant to be the target of it, and they just showed it off, and it's like, that wasn't the point, right? You got invited to headquarters, you took a picture of something you weren't supposed to take a picture of on the tour, and you reveal that.
Yeah.
These seem more like they were breaking embargoes. There were community summits, and they were recording those or revealing them before the dates, or revealing elements of them that were meant to be kind of private. I think we would all talk a little bit differently if we thought all of our conversations were being recorded. And that means that we would talk a little less like openly. And so sometimes a conversation is nice that you're allowed to say things wrong. You're allowed to like, hey, this may not be right, but we're not recording right now. So let me just try to get the ideas out of my mouth, and then we can correct on the fly. And they traced all the leaks to, they believe, one specific person who has been continually invited to these events. And so they have, ideally over the years, they have times that they've been invited to the events and times they have not been invited to the events. And then they have all this hard evidence that they leaked the times they went, and then the leaks just disappeared when they didn't go. And so it's like, okay, you can't go anymore. And so did they ban them from the game?
Yeah. They're banned from the game, and they're banned from events. Okay. And honestly, at the end of the day, like if they're actively like violating NDAs, all right, I don't have any worry. I'm like, all right, that dude, like, because at the end of the day, I think a lot
consequence.
Right. Done. Oh, welcome to being an adult, right? Then the aspect of it though goes into like the law, like a lawsuit, because I've seen a lot of chatter online about like, hey, well, like Bungie should sue them, or he should, sue Bungie. And it's like, I don't think Bungie should sue him. I don't think there's anything Bungie gets out of a content creator in this regards. Like there's
can't help them.
Right. Well, there's a handful of content creators where that money is there. We know that Ninja got paid quite a bit. We know that Asmongold makes quite a bit of money. But in terms of like when you start thinking of content creators, there is only a very, 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 very small percentage that actually you would have anything to take. What do you get from him outside of just like, all right, we're just going to take you away from this game, right? Like, you know, that's the cheapest. What's up?
I said it's been a while, but YouTube a few years back said to be in the top 1% of the platform, you had to make $40,000 a year. Maybe that number's gone up, but like
no, it hasn't. Like, go ahead. I actually have some stats on this. I'll toss them up on screen here. But go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah. So YouTube a few years ago revealed that to be in the top 1% of the platform on ad revenue, you had to make $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Wildly successful channels that have merchandise and monetization off of other platforms should be aiming for a theoretical target of making their ad revenue 25% of what they make. But for the vast majority of small creators, it's 100% of what they make. So the goal is to diversify, which means that massively successful top 1% of channels are making $160,000 of 1099 income, which here in the United States is taxed at, let's say, 30%. So they're bringing home just over $100,000 if they're in the top 1% and they're doing everything optimally, which means the number goes down from there. So you're talking about like the Kobe Bryants of the space are 100,000. So it goes down from there. So everybody can point to the like 6 people they can name that are making millions, but the vast majority of them are like making car payments. Like it's not crazy money.
We're gonna jump into these stats here in just a second.
So I
just
should not sue. It would not benefit them.
I'm gonna go over these stats because I think they're kind of important as a part of the conversation. But I do want to kind of first address a couple of points that are like in chat regarding the individual deleting their Discord. Like for me, that isn't necessarily like a remission of guilt. I know that online, and again, if he's guilty, I could care. Like those are his consequences, but what I end up seeing is a lot of like, and we're doing the same thing, armchair quarterbacking. And we did the same thing with the Final Fantasy 14 raid, where like people are hyper analyzing, like, pixel, like, oh, this and that, and trying to determine like, oh, this isn't a true blind run, which doesn't like, it like when we talk about 14 drama versus like this Destiny drama, it's like 14 drama is like freaking hilarious just because it's like we're actively bored as all get out. So we're going to just go and try to find things. Our conclusion of that whole raid situation was inconclusive. Like I don't see enough clear damning evidence, and a lot of people just fill in that gap with a leap of faith, and that's what I'm seeing here. Like deleting a Discord could be just absolutely getting harassed, and it's like it's not worth it. Like I'm just okay, like it's not worth it. I'm done
deleting evidence,
right? Or it could be deleting evidence. So right, yeah, that evidence, it's the internet. Things aren't truly deleted, and I do remember this, Nevy Link pointing out 2K. I remember them sending what they call investigators, apparently like these like thugs and bullies to like bully the guy over the Borderlands 3 stuff, which was absolutely wild. It's absolutely wild.
Why?
Right.
Like I see 1,000 ways that hurts the company at a public image level, and I see no ways that they come out ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to target the top 5 or 10 creators in a directory to find people that are consistently making 6 figures.
Right.
They're paying 20 or 30% of that in taxes, and then they're spending it on rent and bills and all that. So like it's not like you take that number and you say they've been doing it for 10 years and you multiply by 10 and that's what's sitting in their savings account. It's gone. So like what are you getting? When you have creators that like live in places like New York City or California, it's definitely gone.
Yeah. What money? Like, what are you doing? That's the thing that has always been phenomenal, and that I could never understand about Mr. Happy. I was like, you're living in a very expensive area. Like, you could go do what you do very cheaply in lots of other parts of the world, but live where you want to live. Now, Diamond Princess says that you shouldn't also say that you're doing a blind run if you aren't, and that's pretty cringeworthy. I agree. However, like back to the video that Chris and I were like breaking down, it's like, there is a gap. There's you have to sit here and we could not find irreparable proof. We found, circumstantial.
Yeah, in a perfect world, you have a video of him watching the fight,
right?
With a newspaper dated like that day held in front of him. And
I can't wait to pull the wool over their eyes. There's
and him like actively tabbing over to FanDuels or something to like bet on a sporting event that has not yet happened. Like in a perfect world, that's what you have. Everything less than that becomes something that has to be decided on, and we have to we have to do our best job guessing.
Yes.
And that guessing can vary wildly. There's times where like somebody gets accused of something and the accusation gets tossed out as a headline, and then that's enough. And people have already decided if they did or didn't do it just based on that and that alone.
First believers,
and it
first
happens
to
in good
speak.
things
Yeah.
too. The Final Fantasy 16 got announced that it was being worked on, and there were already people that knew it would be a good game just based on that little. So it can be good things too, but there are these just complete leap of faith, not based on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have hard evidence, right? You can go back and let's evaluate a game that released 10 years ago and to sort of determine if it's a good game based on how it did, its reception, and like all these things. It's like, well, that's much easier. So, Bungie's not going to release this stuff.
Right.
There's
no incentive for them to do so. And there's no power for anybody to really kind of make them comply. Like the power all exists there. And so the only real solution would actually be some kind of lawsuit, but that would be a frivolous endeavor and an expensive endeavor. And thus, I think nothing truly will change or will evolve from this situation. And so it ends up being a lot, again, of this. You're going to, it becomes a team aspect, right? Like in his case, though, like the words came out like he's going to prove like his innocence in this regards. And I honestly, all for that. Like, let's see what happens with that result. But it's going to be one of those things where you're going to believe it or you're not going to believe it. Just like with Liquid Max, you're going to believe it or you're not. You're going to look at clips that were taken, and then you're going to decide that those things were true or they weren't. And there's no actually real wrong answer in this case, because like, I think the content creator in this perspective, especially in the Destiny community, one of the things that like Chris talked about, like these teams, I don't think there is a team of content creators within the Destiny community. I think there is pole positions, and that community in of itself, especially when you start looking at the numbers that they pull in on videos and just how massive Destiny is. I think the general gamer does not care who they get their information or news from. So anybody is absolutely willing to cheer on and see the downfall of any content creator, because that just means the space has opened up, an opportunity has opened up for them. What do you think?
It's got a lot more content around it because the game is so opaque. Final Fantasy 14 is what it is, right? We know when the patch is coming, we know what's in it, we know how systems work. It's all pretty well documented. But in Destiny, there's a lot of speculation about like what a particular gun or build does. As much as the UI tries to reveal things, it falls short many times. The lore has been hidden so many times. And so it created a relationship where the community is used to, when they're not on the game, going out to websites, which means that you have allowed the rise of some incredibly talented creators like Bife to represent the lore side. But it also means that you have these people that go do builds and go do all this stuff. And like many PvP games, you have people that go out and show really great gameplay and all of that. So in Final Fantasy 14, to be a large creator, it's 10,000 subscribers, 20,000 subscribers. It is just a massive milestone. And our drama does not normally target people that are that big. Our drama typically targets only like the top 10 people. We're hearing drama about the same people over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Because that's the level you have to be at to be drama worthy. Otherwise, we need to be upset about a trend, something like a chair. And we might focus on one or two people's reaction to it, but the chair itself is really the subject of the drama, or the reaction to a certain fight, reaction to a certain story moment. And then people large or small, because we're really just looking, I want to see everybody's reaction to a particular story reveal, regardless of size.
Right.
And those get made into big compilations and stuff like that. But in Destiny, like the sizes of these people are also just a reminder of like how different MMOs can be. Because this guy had like 50,000 subscribers. But then when I go look at like the person that I was using to like kind of get a breakdown of the situation, they're at 284,000. And like, which is a number that within the 14 space, you're like, whoa, all of us. That's like every 14 player that's ever gone to YouTube. That's all of us. Like there's like YouTube channels just don't get that big if you are exclusively 14. There's very few that can cross the 100K mark. We have a couple, but it's a very small number of channels that have been able to exclusively off of 14 content make it to the play button. It happens, but it's rare. So I was having trouble kind of getting some context as far as like what is drama worthy within a space?
Yeah.
Is it based on a person's size? Is it based on the seriousness of the situation? As well as the actual just details of the situation itself, which it makes sense that Bungie banned and excluded. Like it makes sense. And 14 has played stuff like this a lot closer to the vest. We've had leaks around events, and they've been a lot closer to the vest than how Destiny did this. I don't know of anybody who's received a public ban, and I don't know of anybody who's ever revealed any legal action against them from Square Enix.
It just, I don't know if it goes in any kind of positive way. Like, it's like the question ends up being is like, if that ended up being the case, like who wins, who profits? I think Bungie loses in this case, no matter what, because they had the leaked information get out there, which is not fun. A part of the excitement and surprise is being able to reveal that information to the community and see that excitement as opposed to having it spoiled. So that's why I'm like, I'm not for leaks. I'm not for, data mining. I'm not for these things. And then it's at the same time, then then all of a sudden they also, look, coming off like the bad guy, in this regards, because they have things they have to protect and things they have to do. And that dissolving that trust is not going to be fun. So I think, in this situation, how I look at it is like, it just is a bunch of losses, a bunch of L's all across the board. And if he's innocent, that's another L. And if he's guilty, then, you caught somebody good. Hopefully we can learn and grow from this. But, I guess the skeptic in me is always just like, I just want more information as opposed to before I start just, blindly believing, what I see online, especially in the age of AI and especially in the age that we live in now, where it's like, so many things can be faked. Audio can be faked. Video can be faked. Clearly we've been in the age of Photoshop for a while, but we're well past that, well beyond that. And so the burden of proof, I don't know. I require a little bit more before I sit here and, start condemning any particular side.
In theory, they're looking at years of leaks, though. They're not looking at a single leak. So the difference here is like 14, to the best of my understanding, has had people that they associate with leaks at events before. And if it's somebody outside of the company, if it's somebody inside the company, that's a whole other thing. But if it's somebody outside of the company, my understanding is they've always done their best to kind of track those people down and then not invite them to future events. And there are other reasons to not be invited to events. So don't go back and look and say like, hey, so-and-so was invited to the Shadowbringers one and not the Endwalker one. They were a leaker. That is not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that in the list of people that don't make future events, my understanding is that the 1 or 2 leakers also get lumped in with that group. Mm-hmm. As we live in an age well past the point of things like digital watermarks and all of that, I have friends that work for companies that use pixel watermarks. You can't detect them. You cannot detect them. Right. So if you leak a screenshot or a video of your desktop, they can absolutely tell the date, time, and who did it. And that's all in there. And so when you talk about companies that a lot of times are letting you play on private servers or letting you play on private, in VPNs and things like that, like they could have all that stuff baked in. Mm-hmm.
Now, just for sake of conversation, because we kind of brought this up as a part of the leaks Destiny leaks conversation we just had. So if you guys are watching this as a VOD or just generally interested in some YouTube platform-wide statistics, which is always kind of fun, like to kind of see exactly how big you and I are, because sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel over the whole platform, but the same kind of concept with Twitch. So thank you guys so much for following us over here. Is that in terms of like, whenever it's like, hey, you're in the top 1%, like, oh, wow, that's incredible. And then it's like, oh, okay. Like, but the people who everybody has that mind share and that has made it is like, yeah, they're in the top 1% of the 1%. Like we still have many, many milestones to go before we're there. So thank you guys so much for liking, subbing, sharing, and commenting on these videos, because we're going to dive into your comments. But Daniel tweets us out, says 30% of videos don't get 100 views. 53% of videos don't get 500 views. 10.4% of videos don't give above 1,000 views. 4.3% of videos get above 10,000 views. 0.33% have more than 1 million views. And 1% of YouTube videos get 93% of the YouTube views themselves. So what do you think about this breakdown? Like, how does this make you feel as a content creator?
I mean, I've been with where the next part from there goes, when like people tell you you're not successful, you should just quit, you're a failure. But then turn around and that very same person is in another comment section supporting some creator and like explaining why they're smaller than somebody else, but that's actually because they're so valid. So it's like, there's a lot of like, typically I tend to believe that nobody is trolling and just outright bashing on another person blindly that's doing better than them. Like I've never met anybody that's just crushing it and then spending their time ripping other people down.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes too much effort to crush it, to spend the effort to go around just bashing people. So like to the people that just say to come troll comment sections and say you're not successful, like I have to remind myself, like there's a very, very rare chance that somebody who's ripping on me having a video not get 1,000 organic is sitting in the, the top 1%. Like that's just not where it's coming from.
PewDiePie's just dropping into a gaming kind of video, and he's like, "This jerk off can't even get 1,000 views." Yeah, you don't see that happening much often, but it's those kind of things, because there's no matter what, like this is good information.
It is
to see and to remember essentially just how hard content creation can be, and then the mental like tax that
millions on every video.
Yeah.
So every video is in the top 0.33% of the platform every single time, just back to back to back. And you're like,
yeah,
God, just imagine if every time you picked up a bat, you hadn't even made it out of the dugout, and you're like, oh crap, I hit another home run. Sorry about that. Like,
oh, oopsie.
Sorry.
Wasn't even trying with this one.
It wasn't even aimed at me. Guy missed the mound, and I accidentally hit it out of the park. So yes, it's a good reminder.
Absolutely. So guys, if you are also heading into content creation, if you have questions and stuff like that, be a part of the Discord. We love helping people, get started, and thinking about this stuff differently. 10 million views. Like I actually have
that's 10 million views.
That's incredible. Way to
and
go.
We just revealed the revenue. So like when I say like the top 1% of creators make it to 40 grand, like, yeah. Now, his view is 36 seconds long. So what I will tell you is super weird is you'll have somebody else that has like 10,000 views, and they can match that number through things like a sponsorship, through things like super cheers or chats or whatever the hell a platform wants to call them these days.
Tips, basically, yeah.
Or through just longer viewing. So when a video on YouTube crosses over 10 minutes, it is now eligible for mid-rolls. And so when I watch videos that are sometimes 2 and 3 hours long, and I watch the whole freaking thing,
yeah,
I have premium, which means every time it gets to an ad, like I mean, they get paid from premium, but if I didn't, I would get a lot of ads. My wife does not want her account under ours, so she doesn't get premium. So like I pay for premium, because what happens is like then when she hits the drop down to like go into her account, it's got all my crap in it. So she's like, I would rather watch ads than deal with all your crap. So she gets ads. So when we watch something on her YouTube account, I'm like, I don't know how you deal with this. There's ads all the time.
Yeah.
So I pay for premium.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. One of the things that we've like, because we have premium, and my wife wasn't signed in, all of a sudden she starts getting these ads, and she's like, you can never cancel premium. And one of the things we also notice, especially with kids, is like we don't like the kids being advertised to, because for them it drives us up the wall, because they come and asking us for all this stuff that they never knew that they even needed. And it's for them, it's like, and I'm like, all right, it's a lesson. Let's talk about needs versus wants. Like, like this is definitely not a need, but I need it, Dad. And it's like, dadgummit, don't sign out of YouTube Premium, because like, especially in terms of some of the content we watch, drawing videos, things like that, we do this together because we're not going to leave our kids alone with YouTube ever. But like, yeah, that's where that gets advertised. And we have like Paramount Plus, but we have the lowest tier, so it does mean we still get ads, and it drives us nuts. And we just keep going like, we should really just upgrade this, because I hate the fact that they're advertising on, Paw Patrol or whatever, to the fact where I think we stopped watching Paw Patrol on Paramount Plus, because we started watching, they have the some of their videos uploaded over on YouTube, and we were like, watch that ad free with premium.
But yeah, so all of this to say, like, if Bungie attacks this person and flexes all their corporate might, nobody feels good about that. Nobody's like, yeah. So like, they don't win any points.
Right.
People that think he's innocent see that as even more of an attack. Now you're going after this guy personally. You can't just settle for him not being part of your community and game anymore. So then they lose points, and like, all of this is the whole idea behind the court system at this point is if they feel that he has cost them money, they can try to regain that from him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so all of this talk about what creators make is to point out like, no, they can't. No, they can't. Because if he has hurt their sales by even 1% with what he's done, that's more than his entire net worth.
Right. What are they going for? What are they
What
going
are they
after?
going for? And that's not a dig on him. Like, that's
right.
not like, oh, what a failure. I'm saying, like,
Well,
he could be having immense success on the platform, and he is still not big enough to be worth something the size of Bungie. It's just a difference in scale. You've got an entire island nation over here building a space ninja game, and then you've got one little person down here who a very reasonable amount of money can go a very long way for. And so the odds of his amount of money, even if he does make a lot relative to the other YouTube creators, the odds that he has enough total net worth to be worth something the size of Bungie spending their time on, keeping in mind they lose in the court of public opinion if they start attacking people legally, and they never win. Like, they're better off just banning and then just saying, and we're done talking about this, which is what they've done in the past. This isn't the first person they've pushed out.
Yeah. And bring this all around, Sony owns Bungie now. So you're also looking at the corporate, viewership of Sony. And again, I think you're right. This is a loss all the way down, L's all the way down as well. And then, I think that probably wraps this up for those conversations. Shifting though into our comments section now. Guys, if you guys leave comments on videos, we're sourcing all of those to drive the conversation and the topics here. So we're going to go through as many comments as we can today with you guys. So thank you so much for that. Cosmos writes, hype is never real in an MMORPG. Blue Protocol follows the cycle of an MMORPG that is hyped because it's new. Then in 6 to 8 months later, it's a dead game. What do you think, Chris?
I would say you could remove the MMORPG part, and this would be true of most things, right? Like, a movie is hyped before it comes out, and then it comes out, and in 6 to 8 months, it's basically direct to DVD. It's all over. So like Mario right now is the hot movie, and it's doing really well, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, movie theaters are saved. Everything's going to be amazing forever. And then in 6 to 8 months, nobody's going to be talking about Mario. Like, that'll be the end of it. I mean, Top Gun was a movie that released like last year and like shattered box office records. And I think there's probably people like, oh yeah, like so we're very short-minded because there's always something new around the corner. It's why I don't get really hyped. Now, the other side of that is I really feel this way. I don't get that hyped about games. I feel like, how are you going to have time for all these new games? I'm not, because I'm really not that worried about it. Because in 6 to 8 months, we'll find out which ones I regret that I didn't play. Most of them, it'll be fine. But the downside is hype looks really fun. Like, as somebody that doesn't get super hyped about most things, I'm a little bit jealous because I can remember being a kid and getting excited about what I was getting for Christmas when I like highlighted it we used to get those catalogs. They were for like the mall or like Sears or something. I don't know. You get this big catalog. It was like a whole thing of like toys and clothes and everything. And each kid would be given 10 Post-it notes, and you could pick any 10 things in the whole catalog. So you'd be flipping through, picking your favorite 10 toys. And they would say, like, just remember, the bigger the price tag, the less likely you get it. So if you pick 10 cheap things, you might get them all. And so so you were just trying to like position your 10 Post-it notes in the Sears Christmas catalog. This was like a real thing. And so like I would dig through it and try to put my Post-it notes, and this thing would ship in like October. And so like all through November, you're moving your Post-it notes around, you're talking with your siblings, your friends at school, like, this is where my Post-it notes are going. And you're like so pumped. I don't get that way about anything anymore. Like, it just doesn't. And so like
dead inside.
I'm a little dead inside. And I think it's because the number of times that like on Christmas morning it showed up and you're like, yeah, I got the same 1 or 2 gifts I got last year, and they turned out to just be toys. Like, they didn't change my life. So I think I just got let down enough times that now I don't have the ability to get hyped for Blue Protocol to the degree that I see people that just seem like genuinely passionate. So when I go, a friend had an extra ticket to a hockey game, so I went with him recently, and like the people behind me were like literally all but like chest painted, yelling and shouting, and like there's something really cool about that. And so people that are excited for Blue Protocol, that's awesome. I have a feeling that in 6 to 8 months, those people are just painted up with a different game on their chest, because they're just going to move on. Like they're not, the reason Blue Protocol is dead because all those hype people just moved on to the next party. Right. And then from there they'll move on to the next party. So
and they'll just keep moving on. And that's where I think when it comes to the dead game mentality, where it gets frustrating, is because a lot of people look at that hype number has some true sense of the community, has some true sense of who this game is for and who wants to continue to play it. And because they move on, it always ends up looking like a game loses massive chunks, which people equate that to being some kind of sign that the game isn't good, when in reality, they just go play something else. And that's why we've seen the model shift back into this kind of more seasonal approach of just make new content and people will come back for it. You know, that marketing, that cycle of hype, that cycle of the grind, and that cycle of complain whenever you've done everything, and then you just go move on to the next hyped MMO. And we see that happen all the time. And you have the micro hype cycles, and the macro hype cycles, where within a typical expansion. So Final Fantasy XIV cycle to this point is very reliable. You understand exactly when it's going to happen, and you understand when the drama is going to happen, and you understand when, you know, these things are going to happen, because you can set, and you have already, Chris, set your calendar, your spreadsheet to these dates and more. And so in this regards, yes, this is what's going to happen with Blue Protocol, or insert any game. But what's really going to make the difference of Blue Protocol and other games is that, do they continue to develop the game? Do they continue to release content as a way, a reinvitation of, to bring people back in for that next round of hype? And we shouldn't count, this is obviously wishes and fishes here at this point, because there's no way that I can sit here and stop people from having that mentality. But the business model that they're offering with the battle pass and the free to play makes it very easy for people to validate for themselves if they're going to enjoy the game. What you end up seeing is that, especially in games like a subscription model, you have these extra barriers that then cause people to pause and go out to the internet and then decide if they want to, based off of what somebody is commenting. And so I think we're also hopefully going to see the end of the power that kind of meme has, the dead game meme, where you're like, oh, well, all right. Oh, it's online. I can go play it. And it asks me for nothing. I'll go try it out for myself because I'm bored and I'm looking for something to do today. What do you think?
We've definitely become like a culture that's been very blessed with a lot of games. And so a lot of what you're describing is only possible because we can churn through. There's always going to be another game.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you don't want to be excited about a particular genre or about games that haven't released, like that's an area that I really struggle with, is games that aren't even out. Like, it's easier for me to be excited for patch 6.4, which is really not wildly inventive for Final Fantasy XIV. If I honestly look at it, I'm more excited for that than I am Blue Protocol, because like that's the type of thing. Like, it's easier for me to like base that in reality. Yeah. Some people like that lack of reality. They like that it could be anything. Yeah. But the great thing is we live in a time now where we don't have to all try to be excited about the same 5 games. This is everything you're describing is only possible because it's a great time to be a gamer. Oh, yeah. There's 65,000 games on the horizon. There's 5 of them releasing every single month in whatever genre you like. It's just a really easy time. Yeah. And as a result, like, you're seeing publishers have gotten so big that there are publishers that are like, I don't even need E3 anymore. So E3's canceled this year because we live in an industry where individual publishers have realized that their own in-house event can be large enough to replace the need for something like E3. E3 went away not because the industry got smaller, but because it got so big, it didn't make sense to try to consolidate it into one convention anymore. Yeah. That's a crazy time. Most industries, if something the size of E3 goes away, that's it dying. It's falling apart. It's on the decline. This failed for the opposite reason. This failed because Sony's like, oh no, our own thing's too big. And Square Enix is like, we could do our own thing. And Nintendo's already doing their own thing. And so that's what a cool place to go, where something like BlizzCon gets 40,000 attendees when they have one. And it's one part of one publisher. That's not even all of Activision. It's one part. Like, it's insane that this is where we're at. So that's why the hype can be so consumption based, where it can just churn and burn these games. So everything you're describing, like, I think the perspective that I take is like, what an amazing first world problem to have, that we can churn these, because I can take an entire team's life's work. Some of these games take years to make, and I can talk about it for 6 months, and then I can just forget about it. Yeah. Throw it out with the garbage.
Now, Virtual Souls in chat says a good perspective of seeing how many people equate MAUs. That's the monthly active users. If you haven't seen that acronym on single player games, like it matters on those, and that's where I get my gears really grinded when you see these articles. Like, oh my gosh, this game came out and it was huge. The Witcher 3 came out and it was massive, and then turns out not that many people are playing it right now. Back to your Top Gun analogy, back to your movie and Mario movies analogy, like. Yeah, at some point, people just go ahead and they move on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's with games as a service where it matters, but it just drives me nuts because they know that those articles are going to get clicks and those articles are going to generate people coming in like, why does this even matter? Because that's the age of social media, and that's the age that we live in. But thank you, Cosmos, for that amazing comment. All right, next one we got coming up here. Kevin L says, the lack of trailers is something to be worried about, and people have already picked apart the existing trailers. The main thing that they got out of this is that AGS hates skirts. So it's regarding Blue Protocol again, which is not a good thing. Cosmetics are potentially big money makers, and out of one of the first things that comes to mind is no skirts. This is already going to cause a lot of people to be wary. NFTs already exist in these kind of games as cash shop items that are traded in the marketplace. Few games actually use it officially because they don't want to encourage RMT. So it can be used as a way to make gold or take gold and currency out of the circulation with a proper tax on the transactions. Meanwhile, the company will earn a bit of money on each transaction if they use real money to do it. The question is whether or not that this will happen enough. Until those NFTs actually get moved between games, I'm just going to assume that they can't be moved. However, there are still things that people are wary of and stay away from. NFTs are one of them. So it's best not to mention at all if you want your game to succeed. Even if you allow RMT, don't call it an NFT. Call it RMT instead and use it as a way to control botting while encouraging a closed economy. Keep it to loot boxes if you have since the average player can't wail for the top items in loot boxes. What do you think, Chris?
I love the idea that the worst problem with the game is whether or not there's skirts. Like I adore that world. If that's literally the worst thing that we have with the game, like that's amazing to me. If the worst thing that you can leverage against an MMO is that it doesn't have fishing, right? Any truly optional secondary system. There's no flaws with the base combat system that you have to engage with to get through the base gameplay. There's no issues logging in or getting through a launcher. There's no issues with base monetization and the game just delivering on the promise that is the description on the box, like the very base fundamental thing. There's no issue with like the story just ends without any meaningful conclusion. Like I love the idea that any secondary system is the failure point because it means that we're already at a point where all of the primaries have been met. So when we look at something like Anthem, which can't even just like keep the base game online, like that whole process, like Anthem didn't die because they didn't have skirts. Like that's what a great place to be in. So if AGS is somebody that hates skirts, they're just anti-skirt, like they're pro pants. Ankles should touch cuffs or it should be shorts. Legs should be separate. Like that's fine. Like if that's where we're at, if AGS is the official leg separatist and they don't allow legs to be in any shared space, no kilts, no skirts, no dresses, like what a great place to be. It's weird, but what a great place to be because it means everything else is going wrong. Or is going right, excuse me. But when we talk about like NFTs, which is the bigger subject here, like that's the headline, right? AGS hates skirts. Well, I'll click on that. The actual headline, the actual meat of this is about NFTs and should games have NFTs? My view on NFTs is I have yet to see anybody do anything that really makes NFTs move anything forward. The idea of NFTs being something that I could collect and it has value because there's a limited quantity, that's not NFTs. That's just collectibles. And that's been around forever. And if you want to know ones that are worth millions of dollars, go to your local museum and try to touch any of the paintings. Like, it's like the idea that there is something out there that there is a limited quantity of, and it drives value from its rarity because it is desirable and there's just not more of them. That's not new. So what NFTs promised is, because they were so digital, keep in mind that having limited edition FOMO based things within video games like MMOs has been around for as long as there's been MMOs. We have time exclusive and amounts in Final Fantasy 14. We have them in games. Is the idea that they're transferable and that the publisher is going to make money off of that. And I haven't seen anything where that really works. Like, best case, it's tradable for gold, and then they can pull a piece of the gold out. But the gold is a mix. The gold doesn't really generate real money, because as far as I can tell, most of the token systems that are successful are pinning their token on an exchange where it varies. When you look at something like World of Warcraft or EVE Online, my understanding is those systems aren't just printing currency. There are people that are buying tokens with in-game currency, and there are people that are buying tokens with real money, and they're exchanging. And so the exchange is following like a supply-demand model.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not just like spiking inflation. So I don't really see how NFTs benefit there either. So the question for me is not whether or not like NFTs lock out somebody who has a lot of money, or they only benefit whales, or they are anti-botter. It's, what does it do that any existing system can't already do? Like, at this point, that's a value proposition that even tells me how an NFT does anything good.
And with how that they've already been received, and people are skeptical of them, labeling anything, hey, we're going to add that, automatically is like setting you several steps back. Even if, let's say, the theoretical possibility of a system comes into play that benefits the gamer, the company, and everybody's like, yay, it's almost maybe better at this point to just rebrand that aspect of it and make it something completely different in its own. And then behind the scenes, yes, it's driven off of the blockchain and, yada, yada. But I wouldn't
call theirs.
What's up?
What does CSGO call theirs? They have a tradable skin economy.
Yeah.
I don't think that
right. But you can't take that skin and apply it to Blue Protocol. You can't take that skin and apply it to these other games, which is this theoretical thing that the NFT bros like propose. Like, oh, and honestly,
these games can't launch with their own assets on day one.
Right. I could see like you brought up examples of like where NFT technology could be interesting is like in ticket sales for events, that if you want to go and, resell those, then a cut is going back to the event holder, as opposed to like right now, they release the tickets, they get bought up by bots, and then they sold the tickets for $30 and the bots are making all the money off the show, in that regards. And so I could see like examples that, some of these things could come around to apply, but I have yet to see or hear any like actual practical use case that makes sense and has value. But I do believe Kevin's right in this regards, especially when you think of NFTs like RMT. Only the NFT part, I think, means it's transferable outside of this ecosystem. RMT is very, obviously that has that similar connection. Like, you are spending money, and then if the company themselves gets in that and helps them manage that transaction, they're both combating like the the bots and the fake RMTs and the risking your account RMTs, and they're also being able to profit off of that. Something like with the WoW token. You have any thoughts on that?
So the problem with the WoW token is all the WoW token is doing is scraping off of a transaction that would normally happen in a back alley. Mm-hmm. So basically, I farm up 10,000 gold because I just like playing and I end up with it, and I don't want the gold for anything. Brian doesn't have a lot of time to play, and he wants something that costs 10,000 gold, or he likes having gold around to buy raid consumables or whatever. And he doesn't have time to farm up the gold, but he wants the results of the gold. Brian and I go out to lunch, and he says, hey, bud, I'll pay for your sandwich if you give me your gold. Great. That happens. He pays for my sandwich. Next time we log in, I hand him the gold. That's RMT. That's already happening. Third-party sellers are doing this with the risk of scams and stuff taking place, but it's identical. It's just now happening between strangers. All the token is in theory doing, outside of the fact that they're not meeting, it's not one-to-one, is there's basically an amalgamation of people buying tokens, and there's an amalgamation of people that are paying cash to kind of sell these tokens for gold. And it's just marrying them up. And instead of the third-party scalper, instead of the RMT bot company that's also running a risk of getting your account banned or stealing your account or stealing your credit card information, instead, Blizzard said, we'll remove all that risk. And then whatever margin they were making, we're going to make some of that margin. So a token is worth 1 month's subscription. So it's a $15 value, and you pay like $20 for a token. So they're making $5 on this side. And then on the other side, you've got a token that's, for me to buy a token, it's 200,000 gold. And if I sell a token, I only get back 180,000 gold or whatever the math is. So there's 20,000 gold just being deleted from the market. So like they're just deleting in-game value and they're making real life money, and that's happening simultaneously. So as far as like how tokens work, they're just affecting, like they're scraping a little money off the top, and they're actually like removing inflation from the economy, assuming people would do the farming either way. There are some people that only farm because the token system exists, but if we just assume that it's the exact same amount of gold either way, they're actually removing gold from the economy in that transaction.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how this benefits them in like an NFT way, because the gold itself is in a big mixed pot with legitimately earned gold.
Right. So then the question is that does that, like in WoW's case, is that them also then endorsing a pay-to-win mindset where I can come in, spend money, and in some degree of my own definition of winning, win?
So the pay-to-win has nothing to do with the token. The pay-to-win has to do with, can I buy progression? And it doesn't matter what you buy it with. If you could buy it with in-game gold and they didn't have a token, it would still frustrate people. If you could buy it from the cash shop and there was no token, it would still frustrate people. It has to do everything with, can I get in a car and drive to the end of the marathon and get the medal? It doesn't matter if I did it with gold or with cash or I owned my own car. What matters is we agreed to a foot race and somebody's not doing it with their feet. That's what matters. That's the problem with pay to win at its fundamental understanding, is now we look at everybody with a medal and I say, one day I'd love to earn one of those medals. And I appreciate and respect the people who have earned those medals. And I am somebody who likes to help other people earn those medals because I'm really good at getting those medals or whatever. And then you've got this other group running a bus service that's taking the highway alongside the marathon. That's where pay to win is a problem. The token, in my opinion, is not the fundamental flaw. You could have a token and then not have bind on equip items that are super high item level, and there's no pay to win. Like it doesn't, I don't care. And as far as people buying clears, that's always been happening, even if that's against terms of service. So like, I don't really necessarily equate that. I think the issue for me is like, what are they getting for it? Like if I can just buy the items off the auction house, that's incredibly frustrating. Then they don't even have to go into the content. They don't even have to zone in. Like if they can just go in and just buy the ultimate weapons off of the market board with gil that they can buy from the lodestone, that's where that gets really frustrating. Can they buy the equivalent of progression just outright? That's where I struggle with pay to win. So once again, it has nothing to do with NFTs. There are plenty of games that have never even uttered the word NFT and it still feels pay to win. So it's not necessarily about token, not token, NFT, not NFT. It's literally, can I win from the act of paying instead of the act of playing?
Well said, well said. All right, next comment we have DW1979 says, I don't understand. Everyone keeps saying that they want something to feel different at low levels or in low level dungeon content. What do you mean though? Like different how? How can still play well in low level dungeons? You don't have to press 5 buttons. You can feel the difference in a dungeon than you're playing to be good as a player versus a not so good player. The pace is different. I don't feel like a dragoon when I play as a samurai. I think Brian nailed it on the head, TBH. Just give everyone their own limit break and then maybe a party LB3. And I don't think jobs can feel particularly homogenous. Other than that, they have the same job to do with their roles.
I think that to play well as a tank, they all feel identical at low level. So, you know, maybe the melees really do feel that different. I'm not your melee guy, but as a tank at low level, I really don't notice the difference that much. It just doesn't, like, at low level. As the level progresses, like, you know, Gunbreaker versus Paladin starts to feel pretty different to me.
Yeah.
But like as time has passed, as we've made sure that everybody has a gap closer, that removes some of that difference. As we make sure that everybody's invuln lasts approximately the same amount of time, especially in casual content, that removes that distance. As we take the AoE that Warrior has and make it a circle, that removes that difference. So it's not about like all jobs are the same exactly, all jobs are different, binary. There's a world where every job is literally different in every way. Nobody has any of the same combos or any of the same functions. That is not where Final Fantasy exists. Then there's a world where basically you just say tank, and then you just go into your glamour dresser and equip a shield or a gunblade or a big old sword, and it's the same skills on the bar regardless. That is not where Final Fantasy exists. But there is a spectrum between those two. Perfectly homogenized, exactly identical, like when you go to the grocery store and you buy one banana and it's basically identical to the other bananas. One might be slightly bigger, slightly smaller. They're effectively all the same banana. And when you get to the register, they charge you the same price. They don't care. And then there's one where they're all totally different, totally bespoke. You're at a little craft fair and every craft is handmade and amazing. There's this whole spectrum in between.
Yeah.
And every time they make changes, where we all start to see an entire class move to having the same range on an ability or the same cooldown on an ability, or this fits in the same spot, or they have, then it feels like we're just sliding ever closer to just playing on a bunch of identical bananas. And like, people don't want that. So I understand that right now we can point and go, well, right now, one is technically a plantain. And but if you stand back far enough, there are other people who are like, yeah, but that's the same thing. It's just bigger. Like, so that's where we're having an issue. Is it's how close are you looking? And we're talking in casual content. When you talk in ultimate content where people are trying to squeak out the last 2%, the difference between the jobs can be fundamentally so big that literally they'll say one class isn't even playable. But when you talk about like day one dungeon content, that's never the case. Every job is capable of clearing dungeons. So I would say that where I struggle is in low-level casual content where there is no metric of playing well versus not playing well. There is no feedback of playing well versus not playing well. And so it is not crazy to think that I go in and I look down at my hotbars and I start pressing buttons and I go, I don't know any difference. I don't know any difference. I don't feel that at any point I can basically put the ranged attack on V where I always put it, and I can put the interrupt on T where I always put it, and I have my 1, 2, 3, which is A, C, and G, and I can where I always put it, and I can navigate most jobs at a level to complete casual content, especially if it's not max level. And that tells me that we're getting closer to the banana side of things. And as they move us to a 2-minute window where everybody's even on the same timings, so I don't feel that the rotation like builds to anything at any different pace than any other job, that just makes it feel even more like I'm playing on a bunch of bananas.
Somebody please clip Chris's banana comment so we can have that somewhere out on the internet, out of context to what he originally said, and then we can forever know Chris is the banana guy. I'll die on this hill that I would love to see a level sync system rethought of, reintroduced, because one of the things as the game goes to level 100, presumably 110, and whatever extra steps out there, one of the things that for me was always frustrating is at some point running that older content just felt like the job wasn't complete like it used to be. And having that memory, right? One of the things is like, I remember running this in ARR and it felt fine. I remember running this in Heavensward and it felt fine. I remember running this in Stormblood and going like, this is a little bit strange. I remember Shadowbringers and being like, yeah, like there, you feel like the job's identity. And that's the thing I said, even in ARR, one of the things that was a key difference maker was Paladin. 49 and down, I didn't like that job at all. But as soon as Paladin hit 50, I was like, this actually, like, I understand what they're going for. I understand the identity. And as they presume to add in more skills and take skills away from lower levels and push them forward or reimagine how they work, the game clearly has become a game that is designed at level cap. And there's nothing wrong with that. And obviously what I'm saying, like, I'm not saying it with the idea or the expectation they're going to do this, because the amount of work, the dev time alone would be so massive. I don't know if it's worth it, but that does not mean that my heart wants it any less. That does not mean that I think it could be an interesting way that they could take that content and do something fresh with it, to take it and say, hey, we have all of this content. How do we make it viable? And I don't think the reward structure that they have in place is that and does that, because ultimately you end up seeing people just kind of like burning out, wanting to keep playing, but not finding a reason to do so. I think adding in a leveling experience post level cap would be interesting, as long as it doesn't affect balance, as long as it doesn't give you power, just as a way of saying like, yeah, here's all these different things. So there's a lot of directions that they can go with it. I do think a personal limit break would be a way of bringing in some level of identity to your job, like you have in PvP. But the clear difference is that in PvP, your skills aren't in this case. Like we've talked about how 14 is the premier. It is the model. It is the city on a hill for controller support, because you can do so much with it. And the question ends up being is that, what should they do with that, especially as the game continues to have its success and it grows and it goes from there? Any follow-up thoughts there?
I think that this entire conversation is hard to perfect, because the way these jobs feel different for the people who play optimally. So how do you add a game that forces you to play optimally without feeling like it's telling you get good or get out?
Right, because you end up, well, so, and then that is so different how it is now. If they did that from step one and it's always been that way, it's much easier to maintain that. But to turn that on, I think that would be disastrous.
I just know that, like, when a game has made me get better, it's because I've failed. My brother, when he did the new Diablo beta, he said, I'm not going to put another skill point in until it kills me. And he literally started a necromancer. He goes, I just want to see how far it'll get me. And he's like, I made it all the way to level 10 with whatever, like the first little area. He put like 1 or 2 points in, and then he just made it all the way to level 10 with nothing else on the bar. Then he spent all his available points, and then he made it all the way to 20 without putting anything else additional in. And he's like, that's a problem. Like, it should push back more than that. The fact that I just don't even have the points assigned, it should not be possible. Like, that's tuning it so light that people will go, well, it's your fault for not playing better. It's your fault for not wanting to be optimal. It's your fault for not reading your tooltips and deciding to get good. But, like, there needs to be, we paid for a guided experience. That's what you paid for in a video game. This isn't D&D. You paid to log in the game to work. And so you expected there to be some pushback, especially in games that aren't real sandboxy. If you log into base vanilla Minecraft and you chop down one tree and go, I don't know what to do, you're in the wrong game. Like, it requires creativity. But Final Fantasy XIV is a very guided experience for people who have to spend their creative energy at work, or they don't like spending creative energy. That's why you play this game. It's on the rails. What do? You just follow the MSQ. Man, it's a great story. Yeah, that's told to you. You don't take part in it. Every quest ends the same way, whether you feel good about that quest or not. It is a guided experience, like watching a television show that you get to walk through. It is a guided experience. So for people to say, like, well, it's their fault because they're bad at the game, because I do see that sometimes, that it's like, well, they don't play their job well, and that's why they don't notice the difference.
Well, I guess the community
make them play the job well.
Right. I guess that takes us kind of into maybe a good community question for you guys to kind of think on, and we can revisit this in a future video podcast. Is that, like, what incentive structures would we like to see them add that could essentially do that? Because like Chris has pointed out numerous times, when you start stepping into Savage and Ultimate, like the differences become very, very clear. And how do you then incentivize without like punishing? Because if you started all of a sudden saying, yeah, you can't clear this content, like that doesn't, that's not going to benefit the game. That's also that would be a completely different directional shift. So what kind of content, what kind of changes would you like to see that would incentivize players to get better? What systems would you like to see in place? And unfortunately, we don't have time to get into our thoughts. So maybe again, like that would be a great topic for next week. So
is the TLDR more difficulties, like, and not at the trial level, that's handled, not at the raid level, that's handled. A lot of this comes down to a lot of people don't want to learn inside of an 8-man where they can get 7 other people killed. The fact that when I go through the story mode, it doesn't cause me to go back and like, I don't like reading, so I'm not going to read my tooltips unless I have to. So kill me. Like that's the answer. And like, I will play it on hard mode. You guys saw me do it with Destiny 2. When I streamed me playing through Destiny 2, like I want to fail. I put it on their like expert, hard, challenge, whatever they want to call it mode. Kill me. Like that's the answer. When I went through New World in these expeditions, kill me. I'm a lot better at New World in the expeditions now because they kill me. And I think there should be a lower difficulty for the people that aren't ready to make that jump, but leave the higher difficulty as well. And so like, I think that's the answer, giving people a progression path. Like, I don't think it's right to say like, well, everything starts at college level. There is no high school in our game. That's stupid. But saying like, well, in our game, you graduate at 4th grade. And you're like, well, what if I want something higher? Well, just go out and teach yourself. It's like that. There's a reason we have higher level educations than 4th grade. Like there's a reason the education system keeps going, because there are people that are like, I want to get better. I don't know how. Can you teach me that? So like having harder modes for story and narrative and single player encounters is the answer. These kind of new game plus, in my mind is the clear way to start allowing me to learn how your game mechanics work in a way that, because saying like, well, you should just go find 7 strangers and then tell them you're terrible and then get them killed for 2 hours. I absolutely understand why people are afraid to do that.
Yeah. Especially in an established game. It's such a different take when the game's brand new and everybody's learning. You see this happen in 14 all the time, where on launch day, a content day, yeah, though there's going to be some jerk off that's like, why can't y'all do this thing? And it's only been out for 10 seconds. But outside of that, like exception, which everybody's like, whatever, dude, like calm down. It's day one. But then essentially like that's the excitement of a new MMO, and that MMO hype is that there's nobody out there. There's no right or wrong. Everybody's still trying to figure out the questions to ask. Now, guys, thank you so much for letting me crash in over here on the Twitch side of things. If you guys are on the YouTube side of things, thank you guys so much for the love. Be sure that if you guys like these podcasts, give them some love over on YouTube, that like button, leave a comment, especially into the questions that we ask, as that's a great way for us sourcing that. Also, be sure to subscribe so you guys can check out all the different videos. We covered a lot here on today's show. And if you guys saw, just even in the, even below here, we've got a lot of comments that we're like, you guys are leaving some amazing topics and comments. So please keep doing that. As that is a great way that we can sit down and just hopefully make some really fun content for you guys to enjoy, whether you're grinding to it in a game or you're just like at work at lunch, just kind of listening in for the fun of it. So keep them coming. We appreciate you guys so much for being here. I'm going to hit end broadcast and wrap it up, but Chris is going to continue over on the Twitch side of things. So if you're on YouTube and want to continue your day with us, hit the link in the description, and we will see you guys in the next podcast, which was tentatively scheduled for Monday. And then also be sure to go hit the Twitter and the poll on YouTube. Let me know if you think it's going to be a boy or a girl. We'll find out probably this time next week. So who knows? Bye, guys. I'm ending broadcast, and we'll see you.